My name is Dahlia Hicks. I'm 29 years old. And 6 months ago, I stood in front of my entire extended family and watched my father call me his biggest mistake. He raised his champagne glass, grinned at his wife Vanessa, and said it like it was a punchline everyone had been waiting for. The room erupted in laughter. His stepdaughter stared at the floor. His wife squeezed his shoulder with that same smug smile she'd worn for a decade. And me? I just stood there holding a glass of water, wearing the smile I'd perfected since I was 7 years old. But that night, everything changed. Because 3 months earlier, a text message had landed on my phone. A text that wasn't meant for me. A text from Vanessa to someone I'd never heard of. And what I read in those messages didn't just crack the perfect family image my father had built. It shattered it completely. I carried those screenshots for 90 days. I never planned to use them. I told myself I was better than that. But when my father stood in front of 40 relatives and reduced my entire existence to a joke, something inside me snapped. What I revealed that night didn't just humiliate him. It exposed a lie so ugly, so calculated, that his wife walked out of that reunion in tears. And my father? He couldn't even look at me. Before I continue, if this story resonates with you, please like and subscribe. Comment below with where you're watching from. I'd love to know. Now let me take you back to where this all started. I need you to understand something about my childhood. My parents divorced when I was 7. I don't remember screaming or slamming doors. I just remember my father packing a suitcase on a Tuesday morning and walking out without finishing his coffee. My mom stood at the kitchen sink and cried so quietly I almost didn't hear her. She never badmouthed him. Not once. Even when he stopped calling. Even when the child support checks came late. Even when he forgot my birthday for the 3rd year in a row. She just said, "Your father loves you, Dahlia. He's just figuring things out." 2 years after the divorce, my dad married Vanessa Caldwell. She was 32, blonde, polished, and she looked at me the way people look at furniture they didn't pick out. Polite, distant, temporary. Vanessa had a daughter named Megan. She was 2 years younger than me, with big blue eyes and perfect manners. Within 6 months of the wedding, Megan had my bedroom. Vanessa said it made more sense because Megan lived there full-time, and I only came on weekends. I didn't argue. I wanted to be easy to love. I wanted my dad to choose me without me having to ask. So I smiled and said it was fine. I slept on the pull-out couch in the den and pretended it didn't hurt. Then the weekends started shrinking. Vanessa would call my mom on Friday afternoons. "Richard's exhausted from work. Maybe Dahlia can come next weekend instead?" Next weekend became next month. Next month became holidays only. And holidays became the days I sat on the edge of their leather couch while Megan opened a mountain of gifts, and my father watched her like she was the only child in the room. I still tried. Every birthday, I called. Every Christmas, I showed up with a gift I'd wrapped myself. I'd sit there smiling while Vanessa took family photos, photos that never included me. For 22 years, I wasn't in a single family Christmas card. Not one. They'd send them to my mom's house every December. 3 smiling faces, Richard, Vanessa, Megan, matching sweaters, a golden retriever. The kind of family you'd see in a picture frame at a department store. I used to tell myself it was an accident, but 22 years is a long time to call something an accident. Still, I kept showing up. I kept believing that if I was patient enough, kind enough, invisible enough, my father would finally see me. I was wrong. The breaking point came the day I graduated from nursing school. 4 years of sleepless nights, brutal clinical rotations, and a student loan debt that made me nauseous. But I did it. Top 15% of my class. I was so proud I could barely breathe. I sent my father 2 tickets, front row seats. I wrote a note inside the envelope. Dad, it would mean the world to have you there. Love, Dahlia. He texted me 3 days later. Wouldn't miss it. Proud of you, kid. Graduation morning, I ironed my white dress. My mom drove 90 minutes from Richmond. We got there early. She sat in the second row, beaming. I saved the front row seats for my father and Vanessa. The ceremony started. I scanned the crowd during the opening speech. My mom waved. The seat next to her was empty. I told myself he was running late. They called my name. I walked across that stage, shook hands with the dean, and held my diploma like it was made of glass. I looked out at the audience. My mother was crying. My father's seat was still empty. After the ceremony, I checked my phone. One text. From my dad. Sent 20 minutes before the ceremony started. Something came up with Megan. Can't make it. Congrats, though. No apology, no explanation, just Megan. It was always Megan. That night, I sat in my apartment and stared at that text for 2 hours. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. I was never going to be enough. But I was done trying. 3 months after my graduation, I was working a night shift at the hospital. It was 2 a.m., and the emergency room was finally quiet. I sat in the break room with a cold cup of coffee and my phone buzzing on the table. I thought it was my mom. It wasn't. It was a text message. From a number I didn't recognize, but the preview on my lock screen made my stomach drop. Vanessa, we need to talk about what happens when Richard finds out. I stared at it. My brain tried to make sense of it. Why would someone text me thinking I was Vanessa? I opened the message thread. That's when I saw it. The sender's name at the top. Jason Milburn. I didn't know a Jason Milburn, but Vanessa clearly did. I scrolled up. The thread went back 4 months, hundreds of messages. I started reading, and with every word my hands shook harder. I miss you. When can we meet again? Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about you. Does Richard suspect anything? We have to be more careful. Megan almost saw us. I couldn't breathe. I sat there in that sterile break room under fluorescent lights and read message after message between my father's wife and a man she'd been seeing for months. She called him baby. She told him she loved him. She sent him photos. Not explicit ones, but intimate. The kind you don't send unless you're emotionally gone. And then I found the message that made my blood turn cold. I'm only staying with Richard until Megan graduates high school. 2 more years. Then I'm done. He's boring, Jason. He doesn't even notice me anymore. But his money? That I notice. I read that line 5 times. She was using him. She'd been using him for years. And my father, the man who'd abandoned me to build this perfect little family, had no idea his wife was planning her exit strategy. I should have felt sorry for him. I should have warned him. But all I felt was rage, because while Vanessa was pretending to be the perfect wife, my father was pretending to be the perfect husband. And I was erased from both versions of their story. I took screenshots, every single message. I didn't know what I was going to do with them. I just knew I couldn't let this go. I saved them in a locked folder on my phone, and I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom. Not my friends. No one. For 3 months, I carried those screenshots like a bomb in my pocket. I went to work. I smiled at patients. I ate dinner alone in my apartment. And every time my phone buzzed, I wondered if Vanessa had figured out that her messages went to the wrong number. She never did. During those 3 months, my father called me once. Once. It was the week before the family reunion. Hey, Dahlia. Just wanted to remind you about the reunion next Saturday. Vanessa's excited to see you. I almost laughed. Vanessa had never been excited to see me in her entire life, but I said, I'll be there, Dad. Great. And hey, maybe don't mention the graduation thing to anyone. Vanessa feels bad about it. He didn't feel bad. He wanted me to protect his image, to keep smiling, to keep pretending. Sure, Dad, no problem. I hung up and stared at my phone, at the folder labeled evidence, and that's when I made the decision. I was going to that reunion. I was going to smile. I was going to play the role I'd been playing for 22 years. But this time, I wasn't going to stay silent. This time, I was going to make sure everyone saw the truth. Not just about Vanessa, but about the man who chose her over me. And I was going to do it in front of the entire family. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew one thing for certain. My father was about to regret every single time he made me feel invisible. The countdown had started, and he had no idea what was coming. The family reunion was held at my Uncle Greg's estate just outside of Charlotte. It was the kind of place that screamed old money, wraparound porch, string lights, a lawn so green it looked fake. Every year, the Hicks family gathered there to eat too much food, drink too much wine, and pretend we all liked each other. I hadn't been to one in 3 years. Work was always my excuse, but this year, I wouldn't have missed it for anything. I arrived late on purpose. I wanted everyone already settled, drinks in hand, guards down. My mom didn't come. She stopped attending these things after the divorce, said it felt like visiting a museum of a life she used to have. I parked my car at the end of the long driveway and sat there for 5 minutes, staring at my phone. The folder was still there. Evidence. 187 screenshots. I'd organized them by date, by severity, by impact. I knew exactly which ones I'd use. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I walked up the stone path and heard laughter before I even reached the porch. Through the window, I could see them. My father stood near the fireplace, one arm around Vanessa, a glass of bourbon in his other hand. He looked relaxed, happy. Megan sat on the couch talking to my cousin Eric. Vanessa wore a cream-colored dress and her hair was styled in perfect waves. She looked like she belonged in a catalog. I opened the door. My Aunt Linda spotted me first. "Dahlia! Oh my God, sweetheart, we didn't think you were coming." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like red wine and vanilla perfume. Others turned. Faces I hadn't seen in years. My father glanced over. He smiled. Not a big smile. Just the polite kind you give to someone you're obligated to acknowledge. "Hey, Dahlia. Glad you made it." Vanessa's smile was thinner. She tilted her head. "Dahlia, you look tired. Are you working too much?" There it was. The subtle dig. She was so good at them. "I'm fine, Vanessa. Thanks for asking." I grabbed a glass of water from the kitchen and blended into the background. I listened. I watched. I waited. Dinner was served on the back patio. Long wooden tables under string lights. I sat at the far end next to my cousin Rachel. She talked about her new job in Atlanta. I nodded and smiled and barely heard a word. My father sat at the head of the table, Vanessa beside him, Megan across from them, the perfect family. After dessert, Uncle Greg stood and tapped his glass with a fork. "All right, everyone. Before we all get too drunk to remember why we're here, I want to take a moment to appreciate this family. We've been through a lot, but we always come back to this table, so here's to the Hicks family, flawed, loud, and loyal as hell." Everyone raised their glasses. Then my father stood. My stomach tightened. "I just want to add something," he said. His voice carried across the patio. Everyone turned to listen. "This family means everything to me. Vanessa, Megan, you two are my world, and I'm grateful every single day for the life we've built together." He paused, looked around the table. His eyes landed on me for a split second. Then he smiled. "And of course, I'm grateful for all of you, even the mistakes along the way." He raised his glass toward me. People laughed, a few awkward chuckles. My Aunt Linda looked confused. My cousin Marcus grinned like it was a harmless joke. Vanessa squeezed my father's arm and smiled. Megan stared at her plate, and I sat there, holding a glass of water, wearing the same smile I'd practiced for 22 years. But inside, I was done. I set my glass down. I pulled out my phone. I opened the folder. I stood up. Every head turned toward me. "Dad," I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. "Can I show everyone something?" He blinked. His smile faltered. Sure, Dahlia. What is it?" I walked toward the head of the table. Slowly, deliberately. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. "I think the whole family should see this." Vanessa's face went pale. And that's when I knew. She had no idea what was coming, but she was about to find out. I stood at the head of the table, phone in hand, and the entire patio went silent. You could hear the cicadas in the trees, the clink of ice in someone's glass. My father looked at me with confusion. Vanessa's smile had completely disappeared. Her eyes darted from me to my phone and back again. She knew. Maybe not exactly what I had, but she knew it was bad. "Dahlia, what's this about?" my father asked. His tone was light, but there was an edge to it. The kind of edge that said, "Sit down and stop making a scene." I didn't sit down. "I just think it's interesting," I said slowly, "that you'd call me a mistake in front of 40 people, especially when your wife has been making some pretty big mistakes of her own." Vanessa stood up so fast her chair scraped against the stone. "Dahlia, I don't know what you think you're doing, but—" "Sit down, Vanessa." My voice was ice. She froze. My father's face darkened. "Dahlia, that's enough. Whatever this is, we can talk about it privately." "No, Dad, we can't. Because privately, nothing ever gets said. Privately, I'm the one who gets erased. Privately, you get to pretend I don't exist. But tonight, everyone gets to see the truth." I turned to face the table. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them staring at me like I'd just set the tablecloth on fire. 3 months ago, I received a text message by accident. It was meant for Vanessa, from a man named Jason Milburn. I looked at Vanessa. Her face had gone completely white. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe a wrong number, but then I read the messages. Hundreds of them, going back 4 months. My father turned to Vanessa. "What is she talking about?" Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I held up my phone. "I have screenshots. All of them. Should I read a few out loud, or do you want to explain it yourself?" My father's face twisted. "Vanessa, what the hell is going on?" Vanessa's hands were shaking. "Richard, she's lying. She's making this up because she's jealous. She's always been jealous." I almost laughed. "Jealous? Of you?" I swiped to the first screenshot. Here's one from July 14th. "I miss you, baby. Last night was perfect. I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me. Should I keep going?" My father stood up. His face was red. "Let me see that." I handed him my phone. He stared at the screen. His jaw clenched. He scrolled, and scrolled, and scrolled. The table was dead silent. My Aunt Linda's mouth was hanging open. Uncle Greg looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Megan had tears running down her face. Vanessa reached for my father's arm. "Richard, please. It's not what it looks like. I can explain." He yanked his arm away. "Explain? Explain this?" He turned the phone toward her. His voice cracked. "You told him you were only staying with me for the money? That I'm boring? That you're leaving after Megan graduates?" Vanessa's face crumpled. She looked around the table, searching for someone to defend her. No one moved. My father's hand was shaking so hard I thought he'd drop the phone. "How long?" His voice was barely a whisper. Vanessa didn't answer. "How long, Vanessa?" She flinched. "A year." Someone at the table gasped. My father staggered backward like he'd been shoved. He looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in 22 years, he saw me. Not the mistake. Not the leftover from his first marriage. Me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. His voice was hollow. I met his eyes. "Because for 3 months, I wanted to see if you'd choose me. Just once. Without me having to beg for it." Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't let them fall. "You didn't." I took my phone back. I turned and walked off that patio. Behind me, I heard Vanessa sobbing, my father shouting, chairs scraping, chaos erupting. But I didn't look back. I got in my car and I drove away. And for the first time in my entire life, I felt free. I didn't go home that night. I drove for 2 hours with no destination in mind, windows down, music off, just the sound of wind and my own breathing. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline, from relief, from something I didn't have a name for yet. Around midnight, I pulled into a 24-hour diner just off the highway. I sat in a corner booth under flickering neon lights and ordered coffee I didn't drink. My phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, calls, voicemails. I didn't read any of them. Not yet. I just sat there, staring out the window at the empty parking lot, replaying the look on my father's face when he scrolled through those messages, the way his hands shook, the way his voice cracked. For 22 years, I'd wanted him to feel something for me. Anything. Pride, love, regret. And tonight, I'd finally seen emotion in his eyes. Just not the kind I'd imagined. It wasn't love. It was devastation. And I'd been the one to cause it. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt like I'd gone too far. But I didn't. I felt powerful. The next morning, I woke up in a motel room I barely remembered checking into. My phone had 37 missed calls, 14 from my father, 8 from Vanessa. The rest from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. I scrolled through the voicemails. My father's voice came through first, slurred and broken. "Dahlia, pick up, please. I need to talk to you. I need to understand why you didn't just tell me, why you had to do it like that." Delete. The next one was angrier. "You humiliated me, in front of my entire family. You made me look like a fool. Is that what you wanted? To destroy me?" Delete. Then Vanessa's voice, shrill and desperate. "You're a spiteful, bitter little girl. You've always been jealous of what Richard and I have. You couldn't stand seeing him happy, so you made up lies to ruin everything. I hope you're proud of yourself." I actually laughed out loud. Made up lies. I had 187 screenshots that said otherwise, but there was one voicemail that made me pause. It was from Megan. Her voice was soft, shaky. "Dahlia, it's me. I I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't know about my mom. I swear I didn't. And I'm sorry you were never treated like family. You deserved better. I just thought you should know that." I stared at my phone. For years, I'd resented Megan. I'd seen her as the replacement, the chosen one. But she was just a kid caught in the middle of something she didn't create. I texted her back. "Thank you for saying that. You didn't do anything wrong. Take care of yourself, Megan." Within seconds, she replied, "Are you okay?" I thought about that. Was I okay? I'd just blown up my father's marriage in front of his entire family. I'd exposed secrets that would ripple through the Hicks family for years. I'd burned a bridge I could never rebuild. And somehow I was more okay than I'd been in a decade. "Yeah," I typed back. "I really am." Over the next few days, the fallout spread like wildfire. My Aunt Linda called to say my father and Vanessa were separating. Uncle Greg called to say I should have handled it privately. My cousin Rachel texted to say half the family thought I was a hero, and the other half thought I was vindictive. I didn't care what they thought. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to make anyone comfortable. My mom called on the fourth day. I heard what happened. Her voice was careful. Are you all right, sweetheart? I'm fine, Mom. Did you really have proof? Or were you just trying to hurt him? I closed my eyes. I had proof. And yeah, I wanted him to hurt. Just a little. Just enough to feel a fraction of what I've felt for 22 years. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Good. I'm proud of you." I started crying. Not sad tears. Something else. "Thanks, Mom. Come home, Dahlia. Let me make you dinner." "I will. Soon." But first, I had one more thing to do. A week after the reunion, I was back at work. Night shift, emergency room. The routine steadied me. Triage, vitals, IV placements, charting. I like the clarity of it. Someone comes in broken, you help fix them, they leave. No gray area, no emotional landmines. It was almost midnight when my charge nurse told me someone was asking for me in the waiting room. My stomach dropped. I thought it might be my father. I wasn't ready to face him yet. Maybe I never would be. But when I walked through the double doors, it wasn't my father sitting in the plastic chairs under the fluorescent lights. It was Vanessa. She looked nothing like the polished woman I'd seen at the reunion. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. No makeup. Dark circles under her eyes. She wore jeans and an oversized sweatshirt. She looked small. Broken. When she saw me, she stood up. "Dahlia, please. I just need 5 minutes." I should have turned around and walked away. I should have told security to escort her out. But something in her face stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was cruelty. I wanted to see what she'd say. "You have 3 minutes," I said. We stepped outside into the humid North Carolina night. The parking lot was nearly empty. Vanessa wrapped her arms around herself even though it wasn't cold. "I'm leaving Richard," she said quietly. "I'm moving back to Virginia with Megan. I filed for separation 3 days ago." I didn't respond. She continued. "I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I needed you to know that you were right. About all of it." She looked at me, and her eyes were glassy. "I was using him. I did stay for the money, and the stability, and because I didn't want to start over, but I never loved him. Not really. Not the way I should have." "Why are you telling me this?" My voice was flat. "Because I need you to understand something." She stepped closer. "Your father is not a good man, Dahlia. I know you think I'm the villain in this story, and maybe I am. But Richard? He's not the victim you made him out to be at that reunion." I felt my chest tighten. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa's jaw clenched. "Did you ever wonder why your father left your mom?" I stared at her. "They divorced. People get divorced. He cheated on her. Multiple times. With women from his office. Your mom found out and gave him a second chance. He did it again. That's why she left him." My breath caught. "You're lying." "I'm not. Ask your mother. Ask anyone who knew them back then. Richard Hicks is a serial cheater. And when I found out, 2 years into our marriage, he swore he'd changed. But he didn't. He just got better at hiding it." I felt the ground tilt under me. "If he cheated on you, then why didn't you just leave?" "Because I didn't have proof. And because every time I confronted him, he made me feel crazy. He gaslit me for years, Dahlia. So yeah, I had an affair. And yeah, I stayed for the money. But your father is not some heartbroken, faithful husband. He's a liar. Just like me." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and handed it to me. "This is a phone number. It's Richard's assistant. Her name is Claire. If you want the truth about your father, call her. She'll tell you everything." I took the paper, my hands numb. Vanessa turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I took your room. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you when I should have. You deserved better. From both of us. She walked across the parking lot and got into a car I didn't recognize. I stood there under the streetlights, holding a phone number I didn't know if I'd ever call. Because part of me didn't want to know. Part of me wanted to believe my father was at least a victim in all this. But the other part of me, the part that had been ignored and erased for 22 years, needed to know the whole truth. Even if it destroyed what little image I had left of him. I didn't call the number that night. Or the next. I kept the folded paper in my scrubs pocket for 3 days, touching it every few hours like a talisman I wasn't sure I wanted to use. On the 4th day, during my lunch break, I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage and stared at the number until the digits blurred. My hands were shaking. I told myself I didn't need to know. I told myself Vanessa was just trying to drag my father down with her. I told myself a lot of things. Then I dialed. It rang 4 times. A woman answered. Hello? Her voice was young, cautious. Hi, is this Claire? Yes. Who's calling? My name is Dahlia Hicks. I'm Richard Hicks's daughter. Silence. Long enough that I thought she'd hung up. Claire? I know who you are. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Did Vanessa give you my number? She did. More silence. Then, what do you want to know? Everything, I almost said. Instead, I asked, did my father cheat on my mother? Claire exhaled slowly. Yes, he did. Multiple times. I wasn't working for him back then, but I've heard the stories. Everyone in the office knew. And Vanessa? He cheated on her too. With at least 2 women that I know of. Maybe more. My chest felt tight. How do you know? Because I was one of them. The words hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe. Claire continued, her voice shaking now. It started 3 years ago. I was 24. I'd just been hired as his assistant. He was charming, older, successful. He made me feel special. I didn't know he was married at first. By the time I found out, I was already in too deep. Did Vanessa know? I don't think so. He was careful. We only met outside the city. He used burner phones. He told me he was going to leave Vanessa. That she didn't understand him. That I was different. She laughed bitterly. I believed him. For 2 years, I believed him. What happened? I got pregnant. My stomach dropped. I told Richard. He didn't even hesitate. He handed me $10,000 cash and told me to take care of it. He said if I didn't, he'd make sure I never worked in this industry again. So I did. I took care of it. And I've hated myself ever since. Tears were streaming down my face. I didn't even realize I was crying. I'm so sorry, Claire. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because you deserve to know what kind of man your father is. He's not the victim here. He's never been the victim. She paused. I quit 2 months ago. I couldn't look at him anymore. But before I left, I made copies of everything. Emails, texts, bank transfers. If you ever need proof, I have it. Why would you do that? Because I'm tired of men like him getting away with it. And because Vanessa called me a week ago and told me what you did at the reunion. She said you exposed her in front of everyone, and I thought, good. Someone finally had the guts to tell the truth. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. Thank you for telling me. Dahlia. Yeah? Your father talks about you sometimes, when he's drunk. He says you remind him too much of your mother. That's why he can't stand being around you. The words should have hurt, but instead, they clarified everything. I wasn't the problem. I never was. I was just a mirror reflecting back everything my father hated about himself. After I hung up, I sat in my car for an hour. I didn't cry anymore. I didn't scream. I just sat there. processing the weight of everything I'd learned. My father wasn't a flawed man who'd made mistakes. He was a pattern, a repeat offender. A man who destroyed everyone who got close to him and then played the victim when they fought back. And for 22 years, I'd blamed myself for not being enough. But I was always enough. He was the one who was broken, and no amount of trying, no amount of patience or silence or smiling was ever going to fix that. I pulled out my phone and blocked my father's number. Then I drove to my mother's house. My mom's apartment was small, but warm, the kind of place that smelled like vanilla candles and fresh laundry. She opened the door in her pajamas, reading glasses perched on her nose, and the second she saw my face, she pulled me inside. What happened? I sat on her couch and told her everything. The messages, the reunion, Vanessa's confession, Claire's phone call, the affairs, the pregnancy, the money, all of it. My mom listened without interrupting. Her face didn't change. She just nodded slowly, like she was hearing a story she'd already read the ending to. When I finished, she got up, walked to the kitchen, and came back with 2 mugs of tea. She handed me one and sat beside me. "I'm not surprised," she said quietly. "About your father, I mean. I'm surprised it took this long for everything to catch up with him." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked. "About the affairs, about why you really left." She sighed. "Because you were 7 years old, Dahlia. You didn't need to know your father was a cheater. You needed to know you were loved. And I didn't want you growing up hating him. I thought maybe he'd change. Maybe he'd be a better father than he was a husband. But he wasn't." "No, he wasn't." She reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "But that was never your fault. You understand that, right?" I nodded, even though part of me still didn't believe it. "I spent 22 years trying to make him love me." "I know, sweetheart. And I'm sorry I didn't protect you from that. I thought if I stayed quiet, if I didn't badmouth him, you'd have a chance at a relationship with him. I didn't realize staying quiet just made you blame yourself." She set her mug down and took my hands. "Your father is incapable of seeing people for who they are. He only sees what they can do for him. You reminded him of me, and I was the one who held him accountable, so he erased you. Not because you weren't enough, but because you were too much, too real, too honest. You made him uncomfortable." Hearing her say it out loud broke something open inside me. I leaned into her and cried. Not the silent, polished crying I'd done for years. The ugly kind. The kind that comes from 22 years of holding your breath. She held me and didn't say anything. She didn't tell me it would be okay. She didn't tell me to forgive him. She just let me fall apart. When I finally pulled away, my face was swollen and my chest ached. "What do I do now?" I asked. "Now?" She smiled. "Now you live your life. You stop waiting for him to see you. You stop carrying his mistakes. You let go." "I don't know if I can." "You already did, Dahlia. The moment you stood up at that reunion. You let go. You just didn't realize it yet." She was right. I'd spent so long trying to earn a place in my father's life that I'd forgotten I didn't need his permission to exist. Over the next few weeks, I started to rebuild. I went to therapy. I reconnected with old friends. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned because I was too busy trying to be perfect. I even went on a date. It didn't go anywhere, but it felt good to try. My father tried to reach out a few more times. Emails, letters, even a package delivered to my apartment with a note that said, "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I didn't respond. Not because I was punishing him, but because I didn't owe him anything anymore. Not my forgiveness, not my time, not my energy. Vanessa and Megan moved to Virginia. Megan texted me once to say she was doing okay. I told her I was glad. My father sold the house. I heard through the family grapevine that he'd moved into a condo downtown and started seeing someone new. I wondered if she knew what she was getting into. I wondered if he'd changed. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by what my father thought of me. I was defined by what I thought of myself. And that was enough. 6 months after the reunion, I got a call from my Aunt Linda. I almost didn't answer. I'd been avoiding most of the family since that night, not out of shame, but because I didn't have the energy to explain myself over and over again. But something told me to pick up. Dahlia, honey, I need to tell you something. Her voice was tight, serious. What's wrong? It's your father. He had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. My breath caught. Is he okay? He's stable. But it was bad, Dahlia. They said if he'd waited another 10 minutes, he wouldn't have made it. I sat down on the edge of my bed. My mind was racing. Does he want to see me? There was a long pause. He's asking for you. But I told him I'd call and leave it up to you. No pressure. I just thought you should know. After we hung up, I stared at my phone for 20 minutes. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him sit in that hospital bed and feel a fraction of the abandonment I'd felt my whole life. But another part of me, the part that still remembered being 7 years old and watching him leave, couldn't do it. I drove to the hospital. It was the same one where I worked, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke. I didn't tell any of my coworkers why I was there. I just walked through the halls I knew by heart and took the elevator to the cardiac unit. His room was at the end of the hallway. The door was half open. I stood outside for a full minute, trying to steady my breathing. Then I walked in. He looked small. That was the first thing I noticed. My father had always been larger than life in my mind. Loud, confident, untouchable. But lying in that hospital bed with wires and monitors and an oxygen tube in his nose, he looked fragile, old, human. His eyes opened when he heard me. Dahlia. His voice was hoarse. I stayed near the door. Aunt Linda said you wanted to see me. He nodded slowly. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. He looked away, stared at the ceiling. I'm sorry. The words hung in the air between us. I waited for him to continue. I'm sorry for what I said at the reunion. I'm sorry for not being there when you graduated. I'm sorry for all of it, Dahlia. I've been a terrible father. I crossed my arms. Why now? Because you almost died? Maybe. He looked back at me. His eyes were wet. Or maybe because I finally realized I don't have any more time to waste pretending I didn't screw this up. I wanted to yell at him. I wanted to list every single time he'd chosen Vanessa, chosen Megan, chosen anyone but me. But standing there, looking at him in that bed, I realized something. I didn't need him to understand. I didn't need him to grovel or beg or even fully comprehend the damage he'd done. I just needed to say my piece. You erased me, I said quietly. For 22 years, you made me feel like I didn't matter, like I was a burden, an obligation, a mistake, and I spent my entire childhood trying to prove I was worth loving. But I'm done with that now. His face crumpled. Dahlia. I'm not finished. My voice was steady, strong. I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I don't hate you either. I just don't need you anymore. And that's the difference. He didn't respond. He just stared at me with tears running down his face. I hope you get better, I said. I really do. But I'm not coming back here. I'm not going to keep showing up and hoping you'll finally see me. I'm done waiting. I turned and walked toward the door. Dahlia. I stopped but didn't turn around. You deserved better. You deserved so much better. And I'm sorry I couldn't be the father you needed. I nodded once. Then I left. I didn't cry in the hallway. I didn't cry in the elevator. I walked out of that hospital with my head high and my heart lighter than it had been in years, because I'd finally said everything I needed to say, and I didn't need him to fix it. I'd already fixed myself. That was 8 months ago. My father recovered. We don't talk. I heard through the family that he's in therapy now, working on himself. I'm glad. Not for me, for him. Because everyone deserves a chance to be better, even if it's too late to fix what they broke. I'm doing well. Really well. I got promoted at work. I'm seeing someone who actually shows up when they say they will. I've reconnected with my mom in ways I didn't know were possible, and I've learned something important. Revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about refusing to stay silent. Sometimes it's about standing up and saying, I matter, and you don't get to pretend I don't. I don't regret what I did at that reunion. Not for a second. Because it wasn't just about exposing Vanessa or humiliating my father. It was about taking my voice back. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more real stories like this one. Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. I read every single one. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are not defined by the people who failed to see your worth. You define yourself. Take care.